Hello. Um, so this is one that I might have sort of touched on before, but I think it's always relevant. I think it's always an interesting subject, and that is the subject of age and the whole idea of youth and getting older and everything around this. So I just want to vocalize how I see it, and my hope is that people watching this can maybe relate in some sense, and of course share your thoughts. I almost always leave the comment section open, so please feel free to share your thoughts. I'll try and get back to them. So I'm 36, and I think this is specifically 36 is an interesting age because in the UK, quite often when there are surveys or let's say, for example, a census, or you're maybe filling in some sort of form. It could be a medical form, or it could be some sort of paperwork. This crosses into lots of categories. But when it comes to age, it tends to be broken up into kind of groupings. And 36 is actually the start point of one of those groups. So it tends to be 18 to 35, or 18 to 24, 24 to 35, but 35 tends to be the end of that grouping, and then 36 to 45, that's the grouping I'm in. If you're in the UK, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, is 36 young? Well, I think in a lifetime, of course, it's young. Um, some famous people passed away at this age. Off the top of my head, Princess Diana was 36 when she died. Marilyn Monroe was 36 when she died. Um, I think Vincent van Gogh was either 36 or 37. Um, and I'm sure there's others. It's like a research. Um, it's young. Of course, it's young in a lifetime. Nevertheless, sometimes I feel that, I've had experiences in life, and I think it's fair to say that anyone who's been through a difficult experience, um, it definitely plays a role in, how can I put it, wearing away at your quality of life. Of course, negative experiences are good learning opportunities, and what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That is true. I do believe that. But at the same time, the older you get, the more experiences you have, and that's good and bad. It's the negative side is it can wear you down and it can make you cynical. But the positive side is I guess it makes you a little bit more intelligent and a little bit more assertive. But the point is, you've been being pitters and done things. I think the pandemic, incidentally, is going to have a massive, massive effect on young people. And it's probably an aspect of this that is very underplayed, very not spoken about as much as it should be. Um, I really feel for young people at university sort of level, say early 20s, late teens, because all these social restrictions that we're having, this is their youth, this is their time. So I think sometimes older generations are too judgmental, they're too harsh. They say, "Oh, young people today do nothing but complain." Well, baby boomers, even older millennials, Generation X, didn't have to go through a crippling pandemic, not to this extent anyway. When they were in their youth, they could travel freely. They could do a lot of things that young people now are often restricted from doing because of this pandemic. So I do think that's going to have a major effect. Um, and it's all the more reason actually for easing restrictions as soon as possible. I believe, and I'll just say this quickly because it's not really relevant to the video, but I believe morally and practically, the more people are vaccinated, the less reasons there are to impose further restrictions, including mask wearing. I know YouTube, and I'm not spreading conspiracy theories or anything like that. Um, but back to the subject about age and youth and so on. So I was born in 1985, the 1st of September, actually, which was the very day, I always like to throw this in, that the Titanic was rediscovered at the bottom of the Atlantic, the very day. And there's actually the news report on YouTube. Um, and I was born in the city where it was built. So I've always been kind of proud of that fact. Um, I think, we live in a competitive world, and it's almost impossible not to mentally compare ourselves to other people. That's not to say it's good to do that, but I think it's inevitable because anything you want to do in life, even if you're not a particularly ambitious person, I think there is competition at almost every level of life, whatever you want to do. Now, some arenas are more competitive than others: sports, politics, business. I would say those three particularly are competitive by nature. An athlete has to win races or fights, or if they're part of a team, a match. Politicians need to win votes. They need to campaign. They're constantly in the public arena. They're constantly um, trying to maintain a level of trust, not always successfully. Business is competitive by nature. The media is fair to say as well, probably the arts. And by arts, I don't mean artists. In fact, they're probably the opposite. But actors, singers, again, it's can you establish yourself as an actor? How many record sales do you have? Because in the end of the day, no matter how good you are, and no matter how much of a decent person you are, or how much your friends and family value you, in these sort of competitive arenas, ultimately, without getting to the top or getting high, it's going to be hard to get recognition. Writing even is the same. It's often said that writers are private people, but even then, it's about, what's the point of being a great writer if you only sell 100 copies? Um, I write short stories. I want to get published. And I don't want to get published and have, well, 50 copies sold. I want to have 5,000 copies sold at least. And I know that's hard. I know it's competitive, and I know it's, um, you know, so I think that's an important starting point. Life is competitive, whatever way we look at it. I think happy people who are not that ambitious, they're quite content with focusing on their own targets. Now, I think that's a great thing. I don't think we should determine, I don't think we should allow our targets to be determined by others, unless, of course, like you're in a sport and you have to, reach a target to win the game or win the fight. If you're a politician, you need to get a certain number of constituency votes and so on. But I'm talking more about everyone sets their own targets, right? And some people are content with just being stable in life and not necessarily, making a name for themselves. Um, for me, ambition does tie in with public recognition. Some people might say that's shallow. I don't think it is. I think, achieving something in this life means having an impact on others. And of course, with that comes recognition. So how does this relate to age? I think we, I think ageism might be one of the last great taboos, and it's one that isn't really spoken about as much as sexism or racism. Ageism. I mean, I think sports particularly is quite age restricted. Now, I take the view if someone is good enough and they're in their 40s or even early 50s, I believe they should have the opportunities that a younger person would have if they can prove themselves to be good enough. Now, realistically, if someone who's 45 is just average in terms of skill, they're not going to get to the Olympics, right? But if they're very, very good and they're 45, they should be given that opportunity. I really believe that. Um, I really, really believe strongly actually in opportunities for older people. Because people are living longer. This is the thing. In developed countries, when I was born in the mid 80s, a long life was probably like if you made it to your late 70s. Now that would almost be seen as young, or at least before your time. Now life expectancy is at least mid 80s, and people are getting older. That's a good thing. But also means more things need to be taken into consideration. For example, care for older people, that sort of thing. So it's a good thing, but it also means other, it has to be taken into consideration. But I really, really don't believe in this idea that life should just slow down and I think it's absolutely crazy to think if we make it to 90, let's say 90, right, that's a good long life in a developed country. And then say after 35, or let's be generous and say after 40, let's settle down. Well, does that mean after 40, life's just mundane? I think that's crazy. That's why I don't like the idea of settling down. I don't mean it's not good to have stability. I don't mean that it's not good to have direction, because of course it is. And it's good to have stability and it's good to have direction. But I don't like the idea of settling down if it means just kind of, oh, you've had your youth and that's it. And this also applies to generations. I mean, I'm a millennial and I'm proud to be a millennial. But again, generation shouldn't define us, and it shouldn't be like, oh, back in my day or my time. Well, why is your time over? That's something to think about. Just because maybe your generation is now moving backwards and there's other generations, doesn't mean that your time is over. Uh, I mean, you're constantly living, you're constantly exploring and finding new things, and I think this is something that we really need to explore. I think that youth is not necessarily physicality; it's a state of mind. Of course, as you get older, inevitably, my 36-year-old body is not going to be quite as fast as my 24-year-old body. But I can still do things now that I see um, that I know I'm not going to be able to do at 56 or 66. If I have a healthy lifestyle, I could be a healthy older person. But um, I really, really think that it's about a state of mind. And I think that we need to change how we look at this, because this idea of settling down, this idea that, oh, you're too old to do that. Um, I'm always impressed by and inspired by older people who kind of start off. I mean, in writing or in acting, they make their mark often in their 50s plus. That's inspiring. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think it should be encouraged. This idea that life should just be mundane after a certain age. For some people, indeed, the best time in their life is later in life. We have this idea that youth is the best time in life, and I guess that's associated with the fact that physically, you're stronger and you're faster, and it's associated with a faster pace of life. So realistically, probably a 65-year-old isn't going to go out clubbing with young people. There's nothing to say they can't, but realistically, they probably wouldn't. But what's to say that that 65-year-old might not find the love of their life and go on a really romantic, exciting, interesting holiday at that age? I really believe that we need to look at life this way, to see it as a constant adventure, to constantly see the future as exciting. And that can be difficult in this cynical world and all the problems the world has. But I'm talking about our own private lives. That's why I really, really believe that the sooner this pandemic and its restrictions end, the more we can all get on with life. Dan Wooten actually said on GB News, we need to get on with life. He made a very good, I wouldn't necessarily agree with all the guy's politics, but it was a few months ago he made this point about getting on with life. And I'm not going to quote it because I'll get something wrong, but it's a few minutes, it's GB News. I think it's worth looking at because um, it says something about this thing that I'm thinking about is youth being a state of mind. Um, I'm 36. I'm not married. I've got no children. I don't drive. There's a lot of things that I still haven't done. So, in a sense, I mean, I've just started off in journalism. I've just graduated. In that sense, I sort of feel like life's beginning. That I'm trying to see it that way. Even though I've had lots of experiences, in a sense, life is beginning for me. So, I know from my subscribers, there's quite a wide range in my demographics. I've looked at the statistics. I've had people who are 21. I've had people who are 69 among my subscribers. I'm probably younger and older. That's great. I value all of your support. Um, and please, feel free to leave a comment about how you're feeling if you're willing to divulge your age. How are you feeling at this point in your life? Do you feel you've achieved everything you want to? Do you feel this idea that each day should be a new day, that youth should be approached as a state of mind? Now, there's some things we simply cannot control. The reality is, as you get older, you'll start to look older, even if you really look after yourself. I was struck recently by a video of a woman in California, a Filipino American lady in, I think it was San Jose or someone in the San Francisco Bay Area anyway. Um, and she was 43. Now, that's not particularly old, but what was striking was how young she looked. And there's this cliche about Asian people, particularly Asian women, look younger anyway, but she really does look. She's become quite well known actually. Jolene Diaz. She made it to talk shows and stuff because she looks like her daughter basically. She's beautiful and she's just stunningly attractive and just incredibly young. I think most straight men would look twice at her definitely. But she's 43 now. Is that just because she really looks after herself or what? Um, who knows? But that's more an exception rather than the norm. For most people, as you get older, you will start to look older. I don't think there's any reason why you can't be a good looking older person. Some things are going to change. You're going to slow down. You're going to perhaps get, you know, things are going to change. You're going to get grey hairs. You're going to get wrinkles, etc. But that doesn't mean that you could be an optimistic. Let me put it this way: you could have an optimistic, positive person in their 70s who enjoys life and enjoys things in life, in contrast to a young person in their 20s who's miserable. So it's also a very individualistic thing. Again, maybe there's medical ailments. I think that must be one of the hardest things about old age. Speaking as a relatively young man, I'd imagine, having medical issues, like a hip replacement or perhaps pains that are harder to control in your 70s and 80s. That might be one of the harder things. I also think perhaps loneliness. It's often said that loneliness comes with old age. Maybe your friends have passed away, things like this. But again, I see no reason why. I mean, there's been some good initiatives to get young people talking to older people in nursing homes via Skype and so on, particularly during this pandemic. I mean, speaking as a 36-year-old, my social life is not wonderful. I have a good friend, and he comes by occasionally, and we watch films. Um, but I think there's this idea of social life being like Friends or The Big Bang Theory, that sort of social dynamic. And by the way, I love those shows, particularly Friends. It's not quite realistic. I think most people don't really have that dynamic where they have this close group of friends who are similar age and they do things together. Sometimes I do regret that. I do feel, well, where's my social life? And I can't say I'm particularly lonely. I've got lots of friends, but a lot of them are online or in different countries. And I do sometimes think that sort of thing impacts how we look at age, because you can get this fear, well, the best years are going by. But this is why it's so important not to look at as the best years, if you catch my drift. I mean, I mentioned online dating. I made a video about that a while back. Again, having a girlfriend, um, having a better social life, all these things I think definitely help improve quality of life if that's what you're looking for. No one wants to be lonely, but it's a case of just believing that things won't always be static. I mean, things have happened in my life that came by surprise, and they were very good things, and I didn't anticipate them. So I think the thing is to have a youthful state of mind. Incidentally, a lot of people think I'm younger. It's a strange thing because on one hand, I'm complimented by it. It's quite nice that people think you're younger than you are. On the other hand, I don't feel it. I sometimes feel not old, but I feel not as young as I want to feel. So age is a curious thing. It really is. But I really firmly believe, particularly as we get more and more into the 21st century, you really need to look at age in life as not like, oh, I'm 70, so life's all slowed down. And maybe you want to be slowed down. But what I really, really believe in is not to look at life as being mundane just because you're a certain age or having to be mundane. And if you're surrounded by people who are keeping you down in the sense of, oh, you're this age, you should settle down. I say, put yourself first, put your own happiness first. I mean, as long as you're not being ridiculous and, just being reckless, or doing things that will compromise your health. But living it up, it's so very important. I remember seeing a video about an old Chinese guy, and he looked old. This is the interesting thing. He didn't look young. He did look like an old man. He had a white beard. He was an old man in his 80s, but he had an incredible physique. And his philosophy was to take each day as a new day. And I remember being inspired by that. So, you know, it's something interesting to think about. So do leave a comment. Let me know if you're willing to, what age you are and how you look at this. For me, I'm proud to be a millennial. I sometimes wonder, when I'm an old man, when I'm 85, if I make it to 85, if I'm 75, how will I look back and think of my youth? Will it be positive or negative? Well, both is the answer. Both. I've had some good experiences in life. I've had my share of depression and negative experiences, but I can't say it's all been bad. I would never say that because it hasn't. I've had disappointments and I've had things I wish didn't happen, but life is a constant roller coaster. It really, really is. And I'm going to round this up, but I find the whole idea of age and time very interesting. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'd be particularly interested in hearing from people my age, i.e., mid 30s. If you're older or younger, it'd be great to hear your contribution as well. Let me know your thoughts.